Greetings all, and welcome to the 35th episode of TM Technical Movement. For today, we'll be taking a look at the Bulldoze, Mud Slap, Mud Shot, Mud Bomb, Sand Tomb, Scorching Sands, and Sandsear storm attacks, and the Sand Attack, Spikes, Mud Sport, and Rototiller techniques. In effect, the Bulldoze attack involves users stomping down and rampaging everywhere, creating massive shockwaves to inflict damage on nearby creatures and slow down their movement speeds. The Bulldoze attack is a unique move that can prove to be a potent tactical move that can easily make life difficult for agile opponents in battle. In a Bulldoze attack, user forcefully stomps the ground or otherwise rampages about on the ground, so forcefully that they generate massive seismic waves that damage all creatures relatively close to them. Aside from inflicting damage though, the sudden and violent nature of the seismic disturbance causes everything that gets hit by it to lose confidence in the footing or ability to dodge another strike, making them more cautious than usual and lowering their speed stat in the process. While it may be flawed in that the closest ally in a multi-Pokemon battle will also end up receiving damage from the attack, and will additionally only deal half as much damage as normal on a battlefield under the effects of grassy terrain, the move is equally benefited by its ability to damage multiple nearby opponents while only suffering a 25% drop in base power, in turn validating in its use as both an offensive and tactical tool, especially since it is also affected by items like King's Rocks. It was for this reason that Silco decided to release the move as TM78 within the 5th through 7th generation line of TMs, TM83 within the recent Sinnoh Special Edition set, TM81 in the 8th generation line, and TM28 in the 9th generation line, from which it has gained a steady cult following among professional trainers. Unless you have a flying type Pokemon, or one that's otherwise immune to the effects of ground type attacks, it is extremely difficult to dodge the Bulldoze attack. Armor is of little use in protecting against the attack, and may even do more harm than good if pieces of armor are driven inward by the force of the ensuing shockwave. The Bulldoze attack may not be strong enough to pose a significant threat against most types of Pokemon, but its ability to systematically decrease the mobility of anything it manages to hit, it is still a potentially dangerous attack that should be countered with Pokemon possessing high speed stats, some form of immunity to ground type assaults in general, or that can take advantage of the fact that a move will harm the opponent's closest ally in a multi-Pokemon battle when executed. Much as the name suggests, the Mud Slap attack involves hurling a clump of mud at the opponent in an effort to inflict damage and blind them. Like the Rapid Spin attack, the Mud Slap attack is designed not as a truly offensive weapon, but for a specific purpose. The move only does damage as a consequence of the fact that getting mud forcefully flung at you is likely going to hurt a little bit. The true purpose of the Mud Slap attack is to actually blind anything that it hits. The mud used in this move is either thrown in large enough volumes or precisely enough that effectively covers up the opponent's eyes and makes it very difficult for them to see, consequently lowering their accuracy in the process. This alone does not make the move worth using in battle under most circumstances, but when weaker Pokemon need a slight edge over the opponent in a way of being more evasive, this move can at least do the trick and deal a small amount of damage in the process. Silco thought the move's interesting attributes alone made it worthy of becoming a TM, and released the move as TM31 within the 2nd generation line of TMs. Shortly afterwards though, they learned that it simply wasn't enough to make the move competitive worthy, and promptly discontinued it, though they would have changed their opinion many years later, reinstating it as TM5 in the 9th generation line of TMs. Since the Mud Slap attack is virtually only a weak projectile, blowing away the mud is the best course of action that can be taken for a counterattack, as the move is otherwise extremely difficult to dodge. Armor is a little use in protecting against the attack, and may even do more harm than good if said armor is damaged by the abrasive nature of the mud used in this attack. The Mud Slap attack's ability to lower the accuracy of anything it hits can make it a threat in early matches, but for most adult Pokemon, this move is a waste of time and nothing that seriously needs to be worried about outside of long battles, or at least as long as one's Pokemon are protected from such negative alterations. Similar to the previous attack, the Mud Shot attack involves spraying an opponent with a stream of mud, otherwise striking them with a large clump of the material in a scattershot fashion. The Mud Shot attack takes the basic principles of the Mud Slap attack and adds on to them to create a damaging strike that is actually able to be a direct threat in battle. With a Mud Shot attack, mud is hurled forcefully into the face and body of an opponent in either a continuous stream or as a wide scattershot package of individual clumps. This forceful impact significantly increases the amount of damage done by the attack, but more importantly, the large volume of mud used also slows down the movement speeds of anything it hits as the mud sticks to the target and effectively reduces the target's speed set every time it successfully hits. The move does take a little time to prepare though, so it doesn't have a perfect accuracy rate. Nonetheless, the applications this move has against faster, more agile opponents can make it a great weapon for evening the playing field and perhaps even turning the tide in battle, as for instance is affected by items like King's Rocks, which might explain then why it was instated as TM53 in Silco's 8th generation line of TMs and TRs, and TM35 in the 9th generation line. Since the Mud Shot attack is effectively only a weak projectile, blowing away the mud is the best course of action that can be taken for a counterattack unless the mud is coming out as a continuous stream, though extremely agile Pokemon can still dodge the move with enough room. Armor is a little used in protecting against this attack, and may even do more harm than good if said armor is damaged by the abrasive nature of the mud used in the attack. The fact that a mud shot attack isn't perfectly accurate means little in the short and long run, as the otherwise moderate amount of damage it does is exacerbated by its mobility crippling abilities, and is thus a move that should be countered with Pokemon possessing high speed stats to negate its most dangerous attribute. Similar to the previous two attacks, the Mud Bomb attack involves forcefully hurling a hard-packed clump of mud at the opposition, which explodes upon impact in an effort to inflict damage. The Mud Bomb attack could essentially be thought of as a strange combination of the Mud Slap and Mud Shot attacks in that it combines the best features of both of them. The Mud Bomb itself is a hard-packed clump of solid mud filled with liquid mud. When forcefully thrown at a target, this mud ball then proceeds to explode and splash the mud contained within on the face of whatever beast is unlucky enough to get in its way. The Mud Bomb attack is decently powerful and is good against a wide variety of opponents, but what seals the deal with the move is that the liquid mud contained within the projectile has a 30% chance of lowering the opponent's accuracy when it hits. Sadly, this alone is probably not enough to make the move worth using in most cases, as the attack takes a considerable amount of time to prepare and is thus fairly inaccurate. Even so, when neither a Mud Slap nor a Mud Shot attack is achieving the results you're looking for, this move is a nice middle ground between them that can provide stat-altering effects otherwise unseen among most other moves, especially since it's affected by items like King's Rocks. Since the Mud Bomb attack is effectively only a weak projectile, blowing away the mud is the best course of action that can be taken for a counterattack. If this is not an option though, fairly agile Pokemon should still be able to dodge the attack with enough room. Armor is of little use for protecting against this attack, and may even do more harm than good instead armor is damaged by the abrasive nature of the mud used in the attack. The Mud Bomb attack's low accuracy rate and seemingly low payoff make it a poor choice for most competitive battles and offers little in the way of versatility, but its accuracy-lowering attributes can still make it a dangerous move that should be avoided at all costs with evasive tactics, or at least partially countered with strong defenses and some form of protection against negative alterations to accuracy. In effect, the Sand Tomb attack involves trapping an opponent in a cyclonic sandstorm to inflict damage. The Sand Tomb attack can almost be thought of as a ground-type version of the Twister attack with its own set of unique properties. Generating a mobile sandstorm with a cyclonic burst of air that effectively traps opponents in a whirling dervish of pain is certainly something that not all ground types can perform effectively, but for those able to utilize this move, it can prove to be a great way of keeping otherwise agile opponents in place that they can get them close enough to the body to make it work. When an opponent is initially sucked into a Sand Tomb attack, they receive a small amount of damage from the sheer rotational force and abrasive nature of the cyclone's walls due to entrapped sediment. Once inside, however, an opponent is not only trapped but will continue to lose about 12.5% of its maximum HP from the abrasive cyclone every couple of minutes for at least 4 to 5 combat turns. Unlike the Whirlpool attack, it is very difficult to disrupt a Sand Tomb attack with another Sand Tomb or even a gust of wind, especially if there is a significant difference in power in the opponent's favor, but a rapid spin attack or something similar can still safely dislodge it. Nonetheless, the Sand Tomb attack is benefited by its usage of wind to inflict damage because the cyclone's abrasive nature still allows it to maintain a physical status in battle, in turn making it a great move for physical combatants with the need to strike from afar and helping to explain why it was instated as TM49 in Silco's 8th generation line of TMs and TRs, and then TM176 in the 9th generation line. Unless a strong burst of wind can be used to destabilize or otherwise destroy the attack before it makes contact, there is no way to directly counter the Sand Tomb attack. Thankfully, even fairly agile Pokemon should still be able to dodge the attack with enough room. Armor is of little use for protecting against this attack, and may even do more harm than good, instead armor is damaged by the abrasive nature of the sand used in the attack. The Sand Tomb attack is not damaged enough to make it an initial threat to any trainer, but the fact that it can entrap and continuously damage a target can make it a dangerous weapon in long battles that should be avoided with evasive tactics at all costs. In essence, the Scorching stance attack involves user spraying an intense blast of searing hot sand at an opponent to inflict damage. While sand on its own might not be a useful weapon in most cases, much as one might guess from its name, the Scorching stance attack involves user raising the temperature of nearby sand and grit to the point where it becomes searing hot, before then creating a mighty gust of air that blows the searing material right in the face of an opponent. Aside from being a decently powerful special attack in its own right, because of the exceptional temperatures involved in its execution, the searing sand and dirt has the capacity to work much like fire does and can not only thaw the user or target out of his frozen, but additionally has a 30% chance of inflicting a burn every time it hits. This alone can make the attack a devastating weapon in any battle, especially since it's also affected by items like King's Rocks, but the fact that its use often generates a temporary but thick screen of sand can prove to be a tactical advantage as well, especially with Pokemon that have enhanced eyesight that can see through the sand, overall running it a potent force to be reckoned with outside the base damage it can deal, and more than giving enough reason behind its conversion into TM215 for Silco's 9th generation line of TMs. Since the Scorching stance attack utilizes sand and immensely high temperatures in its execution, additional heat can potentially stop the attack and form glass, but the move is extremely difficult to dodge otherwise. Moreover, armor is a little used for protecting against the attack, and may even do more harm than good if said armor is damaged by the abrasive nature of the sand used in the attack. The Scorching stance attack is a potent move that can more than prove to be a serious threat in the right cases, and while it might not always be that common to see, it is still a potentially devastating strike that can only truly be defended against with strong defenses and a way to heal burns that it may inflict. A trait that serves as ultimate threat point, and thus one worth preparing for something that won't be limited by the damage and attack lowering attributes of said status condition. Considered to be the signature attack of Landorus, the Sandsear storm attack involves user generating a massive cyclone of air and searing sand around a target in order to inflict damage. The members of the group of legendary Pokémon known as the Forces of Nature are powerful beings of the air with strong ties to legends of Jin, the four symbols of Chinese mythology, and other spiritual beings, and they are all alike in that they are able to use the power of wind, as well as their own specialty attributes, to inflict notable damage on others and change the course of battle in an instant. In the case of Landorus, their power is rarely displayed as part of the Sandsear storm attack, which involves them generating and entrapping an opponent in a terrible sand-laden tempest of air. The attack itself takes some time to generate, and is thus not very accurate compared to other wind-based attacks, but the move itself is strong enough to fiercely assault the bodies of those caught in it with searing sand and more power than it might be able to handle in the right conditions. Aside from making the attack fairly powerful on its own, the sandstorm winds used in it also have a 20% chance of inflicting the target with a burn, a powerful condition that can easily make it harder for opponents to strike back in retaliation with physical attacks. This attack is made even more dangerous by the fact that it is still affected by held items like King's Rocks, and in turn is seen as one of the most dangerous weapons a ground-type Pokémon could ever get access to in a drawn-out fight. Due to the immense cyclonic forces present in the Sandsear storm attack, little more than another equally strong or stronger wind-based attack can destabilize or otherwise destroy it. If this is not an option though, fairly agile Pokémon can still dodge the attack with enough room. Armor is of little use in protecting against the attack, and may even do more harm than good if pieces of armor are braided, fragmented, and driven inward by the intense cyclonic force of the attack. The Sandsear storm attack is a move rare enough that most will never have to worry about facing it themselves, but for those that are pitted up against a Landorus with access to the move, only strong defenses are going to have much of a chance at dealing with it, as well as an emphasis on offensive stat boost in order to ignore the debilitating effects of the move's secondary effect as much as possible. As its name implies, the sand attack technique involves throwing sand directly into opponents' eyes, temporarily blinding them, or otherwise making it very difficult for them to see. In short, there really isn't a whole lot to say about the sand attack. For creatures that actually have the ability to see, getting sand thrown into the eyes is likely to cause some discomfort and temporary blindness, and turn lowering the opponent's accuracy for a short amount of time. At the same time, however, the sand attack's simplicity is also what makes it a useful defensive technique. For one thing, the vast majority of Pokémon that can learn it fairly early on in their lives, allowing them to take advantage of it at an early age. The technique is also very accurate, and is the only ground-type move that is actually able to hit opponents that are otherwise immune to ground-type moves, making it a great move for leveling the playing field regardless of type. Altogether, these few simple traits make the sand attack technique fairly useful when dealing with moves that otherwise have low accuracy rate. The more inaccurate the opponent is, the less likely they are to actually hit their target every time, and the bigger advantage the opposing side has, especially if either side is trying to outlast the other defensively. Techniques that raise a Pokemon's accuracy or lower an opponent's evasion stats are highly recommended for dealing with the sand attack technique. As one might imagine from its name, the Spikes technique involves scattering sharp, spiky shards of hardened material in an attempt to inflict damage on any opponent foolish enough to enter the battlefield. The Spikes technique is designed to make life difficult for all ground-treading creatures by literally engulfing the opposing side's area in a multitude of sharp, angular pieces of hardened exoskeleton, shell, or even metal. These objects do not do any direct damage on their own, and are actually unable to inflict damage against most opponents initially, but that's only because they can actually see them. Pokémon on the verge of being switched out into battle, however, do not have this luxury and are instantly damaged by the spikes the moment they enter the battlefield and come into contact with the ground. Under normal circumstances, this has the effect of dealing about 12.5% of the maximum HP and damage, but interestingly enough, additional waves of spikes can be launched onto the battlefield to increase its damage to 16.67% and finally 25% in practice. This makes the Spikes technique a dangerous move for any type of opponent, but since the objects are stuck firmly on the ground, hence the move's ground-type assignment, flying types and Pokémon otherwise unaffected by ground-type moves are completely immune to them. Even so, if built up sufficiently, the Spikes technique is a devastating move that only a quick rapid spin attack or something similar, or a defog technique, will be able to dispel completely, which might help to explain why it was installed as TR-23 in Silphicle's first line of TRs, as well as TM-90 in the 9th generation line of TMs. Without access to something like rapid spin or defog, or a Pokémon immune to ground-type moves, there's no way to directly counter the effects of the Spikes technique. In essence, the Mud Sport technique involves spraying large quantities of mud on the battlefield and others in order to provide a buffer against electricity. The Mud Sport technique is a move that actually serves little purpose for most of the Pokémon that are able to learn naturally, but nonetheless has interesting practical applications in battle. In a Mud Sport technique, the user essentially hurls large quantities of mud into the air and covers both the battlefield and all Pokémon on it with mud. Aside from making anything within several meters extremely dirty, this mud actually helps to counter the damaging effects of electricity by raising the natural resistance to electrical charge movement that all creatures possess. In effect, this reduces the damage done by all electric-type attacks by 66.67% until the mud dries up and falls off about 5 combat turns later. Interestingly enough though, most of the Pokémon able to learn this move naturally are already ground types and thus immune to electric-type attacks. As such, the move has few useful applications outside multi-Pokémon battles, but at the very least, it can help electricity-vulnerable teams last longer against an otherwise imposing opposition. Due to its unique attributes, there is no directly counter the effects of the Mud Sport technique aside from waiting for it to wear off. In essence, the Rototiller technique involves the user tilling the soil around and in the battlefield to reveal more nutrient-rich soil hidden below, primarily for the benefit of all present grass-type Pokémon. The Rototiller technique is certainly known by Pokémon that have advanced digging skills, are able to not only plow through soil to attack, but, more importantly, can churn it into something that plants in general can make great use of. In performing the Rototiller technique, Pokémon dig through the soil of the battlefield and churn it up substantially, shoving dry, nutrient-poor soil away from the ground while bringing up darker, more nutrient-rich soil from deep below. This does not have any real effect on most Pokémon, including those actually able to use this move, but it is a huge boon to any grass-type Pokémon present that can take advantage of root structures or other anatomical parts to draw nutrients straight from the soil. The act of churning the soil with this move allows grass types to get a sudden, relative free source of nutrients that otherwise require them to actually plant their roots and reach for it to obtain. This sudden bounty is reflected in their stats, as the sudden influx of nutrient-rich material makes them happy and grants them a considerable boost in energy, raising their attack and special attack stats in the process. The Rototiller technique may not have many applications in battle on its own, but with a supply of grass types on one's team in need of a boost, this move can more than give trainers struggling in battle the green thumb they need to survive. Attacks and techniques that raise a Pokemon's defense and special defense stats, or lower the opponent's attacks and special attack stats, as well as any that can change the type of a target or otherwise remove all grass-type Pokemon from the field, are highly recommended for dealing with the Rototiller technique. That's it for this episode, so stay tuned for the next episode of TM Technical Movement. Thank you all for watching this video. It is a great pleasure to share with you all the fruits of my research and all the positives it gives to understanding the wonderful creatures we call Pokemon and how their powers and behaviors function in their world. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more work like it, please give a like, comment, and or subscribe to the channel so you can get regular notifications on when new content is being uploaded. You can also find links to my DeviantArt page, Patreon, and Discord server in the description below. Please, join me on this road to seeing what the world of Pokemon has to share with us, and the many mysteries and wonders that keep us all coming back for more.